What if the movies of the Cold War were not just entertainment, but coded warnings about the future? Imagine stories from the 1960s predicting real nuclear crises, spy scandals, and political cover-ups before they ever happened. These films did more than thrill audiences, they foresaw reality itself. Tonight we uncover the forgotten Cold War movies that turned fiction into frightening prophecy. Number 10. Fail Safe, 1964. When Sidney Lumet's tense thriller, Fail Safe, hit theaters in 1964, it was hailed as a masterpiece of realism and dread. The film follows a nightmare scenario where a computer malfunction sends American bombers toward Moscow, triggering an unstoppable nuclear countdown. No aliens, no monsters, just the terrifying simplicity of human error and mechanical failure. What made the film eerily prophetic was not its drama, but its accuracy. It premiered only a year after the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the world teetered on the edge of annihilation. Pentagon insiders were reportedly unsettled by how closely the movie mirrored real command protocols. The government even requested that certain details about nuclear codes and response systems be altered before release. During production, Lumet pushed his actors to capture the suffocating calm of impending disaster. Henry Fonda, as the president, delivers his lines with the weight of unbearable guilt as he decides to sacrifice New York City to save humanity. The studio nearly delayed the film, fearing it would spark public panic, especially since Dr. Strangelove, another nuclear satire, was being released the same year. When military advisors saw Fail Safe, they called it too close for comfort. In later years, declassified documents confirmed that several near misses between American and Soviet systems happened exactly as depicted. Lumet's fictional tragedy became a mirror of reality, and decades later, it remains a chilling echo of how close the Cold War came to ending everything. Number 9. The Manchurian Candidate, 1962. The Manchurian Candidate shocked 1960s audiences with its daring mix of political thriller and psychological horror. The film follows a decorated soldier brainwashed by communists and turned into an unwitting assassin upon returning home. It was a box office success and a cultural phenomenon that dared to suggest something unthinkable, that the enemy might already be inside America's own mind. But here's the twist. The movie came out 1 year before the assassination of President John F. Kennedy and was pulled from circulation after his death. Its plot of mind control, political manipulation, and covert influence felt too real too soon. Whispers spread that the film had predicted the national trauma itself. Some even claimed government agencies had requested the studio to bury it for years. Behind the camera, director John Frankenheimer faced pressure from nervous financiers and Cold War paranoia. Star Frank. Sinatra reportedly fought studio executives to keep the ending unchanged, fearing any alteration would blunt its warning about obedience and control. The controversy only deepened when in later decades declassified CIA documents revealed real experiments in psychological conditioning known as MK Ultra. What was dismissed as science fiction in 1962 suddenly became historical fact. The Manchurian Candidate transformed from entertainment into prophecy, its vision of a weaponized mind decades ahead of its time. Even now, the film's icy calm and tragic inevitability make it feel less like a thriller and more like a dark glimpse into the machinery of power. Number 8. 7 Days in May, 1964. In 7 Days in May, the enemy was not foreign but domestic. Released in 1964, this gripping political thriller imagined a secret military coup within the United States. Kirk Douglas plays a loyal officer uncovering a plot led by a power-hungry general to overthrow the president. Audiences saw it as fantasy, but Washington insiders felt a chill. The script, written by Rod Serling, was based on rumors that some American generals were furious over nuclear disarmament talks. When President John F. Kennedy read the novel, he reportedly encouraged the film's production, believing it would warn the nation against real authoritarian ambition. The Pentagon, however, refused cooperation, fearing it exposed too much of internal military tension. Production was a logistical nightmare. Scenes set near the White House were filmed under tight security, and studio staff were instructed not to leak details. The filmmakers faced pushback from conservative politicians, calling the movie subversive. Critics praised its realism, but warned it might be taken as an attack on the armed forces. Years later, historians revealed that Kennedy's own fears of military insubordination were not unfounded. Some military officials indeed voiced frustration with civilian leadership during the Cold War peak. The film's scenario of generals believing they knew better than the president was not fiction, but a reflection of dangerous currents running through real corridors of power. When viewed today, 7 Days in May feels less like a warning from the past and more like a blueprint of how democracies can fall quietly from within. Its quiet menace and prophetic tone still echo with unnerving truth. Number 7. The Bedford Incident, 1965. When the Bedford Incident surfaced in 1965, audiences were already exhausted by Cold War fear. Yet this British-American thriller reignited it with chilling precision. The film follows an American destroyer patrolling the Arctic Circle under the command of Captain Eric Finlander, played by Richard Widmark. His obsession with tracking a Soviet submarine turns a routine mission into a countdown to annihilation. The movie was marketed as a naval adventure, but beneath its steel corridors lurked a study of madness and power. The claustrophobic cinematography made the ship feel like a pressure cooker, where every beep and whisper could start a war. Critics compared it to Moby Dick, with missiles instead of harpoons, and one man's pride steering the world toward destruction. What made the Bedford Incident prophetic was its portrayal of military brinkmanship spiraling beyond control. Just 2 decades later, a Soviet officer named Stanislav Petrov would face a similar real-life crisis when his radar falsely detected American missiles. Like the film's doomed crew, he had seconds to choose between retaliation and restraint. His calm decision not to launch a counterstrike may have saved humanity. Behind the scenes, the production was tense. The U.S. Navy refused assistance, fearing the script portrayed officers as unstable. Widmark and co-star Sidney Poitier clashed over the ending, arguing whether it should show redemption or pure tragedy. Director James B. Harris chose despair, and the final moments where human error triggers catastrophe became unforgettable. For years, the Bedford Incident was ignored, then rediscovered by historians after declassified documents revealed multiple Cold War near misses eerily matching its plot. Today, the film stands as a haunting relic, not of fiction, but of foresight. It captured the peril of command, the madness of pride, and the terrifying truth that one man's decision could erase the world. Number 6. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, 1965. In an era of cinematic glamour and larger-than-life, Spies, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold arrived like a punch to the gut. Released in 1965 and adapted from John le Carré's novel, it stripped espionage of its elegance and revealed the moral rot beneath. Richard Burton's portrayal of Alec Lemus, a weary British agent disillusioned by lies, became one of the most human depictions of Cold War betrayal ever filmed. Unlike the escapist fantasies of James Bond, this film offered a grim world of manipulation and sacrifice. Its gray-wash sets mirrored the moral fog of intelligence work. Every alliance was a trap, every truth a weapon. Liamas is sent on a mission to deceive the East German intelligence service, but soon realizes he has become expendable to his own superiors. At first, the film was accused of anti-Western sentiment, and British censors nearly delayed its release. The CIA reportedly disliked how it portrayed espionage as futile and corrupt. Yet, what once seemed cynical later proved prescient. Le Carré based his story on real defectors and counter-spies within both sides of the Iron Curtain. Decades later, records confirmed that moles existed deep inside MI6 and the CIA, just as the film had warned. The bleak atmosphere reflected a real shift in the intelligence world. It was no longer about heroes versus villains, but bureaucrats sacrificing pawns. Burton's exhausted eyes told audiences that survival meant complicity and silence. The film's authenticity was so striking that even real agents admitted it felt truer than the reports they filed. When the Berlin Wall eventually fell, the film's prophecy came full circle. Espionage was revealed to be less about patriotism and more about disinformation. The gray world of Alec Lemus was not fiction, but the real color of Cold War deceit. Number 5. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961. In 1961, the British film The Day the Earth Caught Fire imagined a world scorched by mankind's arrogance. At first, it seemed like pure science fiction. Two nations conduct simultaneous nuclear tests, altering the planet's axis and sending Earth spiraling toward the sun. The story follows cynical journalists racing to uncover the truth, while London slowly melts in unbearable heat. What began as fantasy soon felt like prophecy. Only a year later, the United States and Soviet Union launched dozens of high-yield nuclear tests in the atmosphere, causing measurable shifts in global weather. Scientists debated whether human weapons could actually alter the climate. Audiences watching the day the Earth caught fire in theaters suddenly wondered if it had already begun. The film's tone was grim and eerily journalistic. Instead of showing explosions, it focused on confusion, censorship, and government denial. The newsroom scenes felt real because the script was written by former reporters. The British Board of Film Censors nearly banned it for its anti-nuclear message, while American distributors cut key dialogue criticizing both superpowers. Behind the scenes, director Val Guest fought fierce studio pressure to make the story hopeful. He refused. The movie ends with two newspaper front pages printed in advance, one declaring Earth saved the other, announcing humanity's extinction. The film fades before revealing which headline goes to press. That ambiguity became legendary. Decades later, scientists revisited the movie after the discovery of ozone depletion and climate change caused by human technology. What once sounded like science fiction now reads like early environmental prophecy. The day the Earth caught fire warned that arrogance could ignite apocalypse, and that truth would be silenced long before the flames arrive. Number 4. The War Game, 1965. In 1965, a television film stunned Britain and the world. It was called The War Game, and it was not a typical movie. It looked like a documentary, but felt like the end of civilization. Director Peter Watkins imagined what would happen if a nuclear bomb detonated over Kent. What followed was so real, the BBC banned it for 20 years. Shot in grainy black and white, the film mimicked newsreel footage. Civilians screamed as radiation storms swept through towns. Firemen collapsed from heat and hunger. Government spokesmen lied through trembling voices. It was not entertainment, it was a mirror. Audiences who attended private screenings fainted or fled the theater. Critics called it the most terrifying film ever made without showing a single monster. Here is where the prophecy begins. Watkins designed his script using leaked civil defense manuals and scientific projections from actual military research. His depiction of nuclear fallout, famine, and societal collapse matched classified reports that were declassified decades later. Even the estimated death toll per region was eerily accurate to the official calculations. Behind the scenes, Watkins faced surveillance and political pressure. BBC executives labeled the movie too dangerous for public morale. American networks refused to air it, fearing it would inflame anti-nuclear protests during the Vietnam escalation. It won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature, but ordinary citizens were not allowed to see it. When it finally aired on British television in 1985, it horrified a new generation that recognized its realism. By then, government scientists admitted that the effects portrayed were close to truth. The War Game predicted not just the devastation of nuclear war, but the collapse of public trust itself. It remains one of the most chilling examples of cinema foretelling the unthinkable. Number 3. The Ipcress File, 1965. While James Bond fought villains in tuxedos, the Ipcress File exposed espionage's dirtier reality. Released in 1965 and starring Michael Caine as Agent Harry Palmer, this British thriller turned the glamour of spying inside out. Instead of gadgets and martinis, it gave viewers fluorescent lights, cheap offices, and endless paperwork. But beneath its gray realism hid a chilling prediction about real mind control experiments. The plot follows Palmer investigating the disappearance of top scientists who reappear brainwashed. The discovery of a mysterious sound frequency used to erase thought sounded like Pulp Fiction. Yet years later, the world learned about the CIA's MK-Ultra program. Real agents had tested psychological conditioning through sound drugs and hypnosis, exactly as shown in the movie. At the time, the Ipcress File was considered bold, even subversive. The British Ministry of Defense objected to certain scenes depicting classified security procedures. Producers were forced to rewrite lines referring to electronic brain manipulation. American distributors cut sections they felt too suggestive of real intelligence operations. Still, audiences were captivated by its cold detachment and grim humor. Behind-the-camera director, Sidney J. Furie used distorted angles and cluttered frames to make viewers feel trapped in a bureaucratic labyrinth. Michael Caine's weary performance helped redefine the spy archetype not as hero, but as disposable tool. Intelligence officers later admitted the film's tone was closer to their daily life than any glamorous portrayal. When declassified documents surfaced in the 1970s, revealing secret mind experiments, both journalists and historians cited the Ipcress file as cultural prophecy. What had been dismissed as British imagination turned out to be real. The film predicted the psychological warfare of modern intelligence decades before the public learned the truth. In the end, its legacy is not just cinematic style, but moral warning. Power does not always need bullets. Sometimes it only needs control of the human mind. Number 2. The Satan Bug, 1965. Released in the height of Cold War paranoia. The Satan Bug blended espionage with science fiction to imagine the ultimate weapon. A deadly virus escapes from a secret government lab capable of destroying all life on Earth. Audiences dismissed it as fantasy, but within years the line between the movie and real headlines began to blur. The story follows a former intelligence agent hired to recover stolen vials of the weapon. The chase crosses deserts, laboratories, and political shadows. Yet, what made it disturbing was its realism. Director John Sturges filmed with scientific consultants who based the virus on emerging biological research from both American and Soviet facilities. The movie's fictional Fort Detrick was inspired by a real top-secret site developing germ warfare technology. When the film premiered, critics called it far-fetched, but by the late 1960s, reports of actual bioweapons research surfaced in congressional hearings. Everything from weaponized anthrax to viral containment breaches mirrored the film's scenarios. Decades later, during the Cold War's end, the existence of massive Soviet germ warfare programs confirmed that the Satan Bug had not been fantasy but foreshadowing. Behind-the-scenes production was riddled with secrecy. Sturges was forced to destroy leftover props after government consultants warned they resembled real equipment. Actor George Maharis described the shoot as unsettling, saying the material felt more like classified briefings than script pages. The film underperformed at the box office, but its influence spread quietly through popular culture, inspiring a generation of pandemic thrillers. In hindsight, The Satan Bug reads like a warning from a decade before its time, predicting biological arms races and laboratory accidents that would haunt later centuries. It stands today as a grim monument to the era when fiction could see the future more clearly than science itself. Number 1. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, 1964. Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove was supposed to be a black comedy, yet it became one of the most terrifyingly accurate films ever made. Released in 1964, it told the story of a deranged American general who orders a nuclear strike on the Soviet Union without authorization. It sounded absurd, but soon after release, the world learned just how close to truth Kubrick had come. The film was a dark mirror reflecting real procedures of the Strategic Air Command. Kubrick consulted military analysts and discovered horrifying gaps in communication and fail-safe systems. His fictional scenario of rogue nuclear launch orders was not far from reality. In fact, declassified documents later confirmed that during the Cold War, American bombers routinely flew armed near Soviet borders, with standing orders that could have triggered apocalypse by mistake. Even before it premiered, the Pentagon wanted to know how Kubrick had obtained such realistic information. Some insiders accused him of espionage. Others whispered that Dr. Strangelove hit too close to top-secret operations. The studio faced pressure to tone down scenes showing incompetence at the highest levels of command, but Kubrick refused. He wanted audiences to see the madness behind the machinery. Behind the camera, chaos ruled. Peter Sellers played multiple roles, switching between lunacy and despair, while Kubrick forced dozens of takes to achieve the perfect balance between comedy and horror. Filming stretched for months as global tensions rose. The Cuban Missile Crisis had just ended, and paranoia filled the air. Many critics wondered if audiences would even laugh at the end of the world. The ending was unforgettable. Bombs drop in slow motion to the tune of "We'll Meet Again." The world explodes not in fire, but in absurdity. What felt like satire soon became prophecy. Years later, it was revealed that several near-nuclear incidents mirrored the film's exact scenario, including a 1979 computer malfunction that falsely signaled Soviet missiles inbound to the United States. Kubrick's movie predicted not just technological failure, but human failure. It showed that apocalypse might come not from hatred, but from bureaucracy, from pride, and from the illusion of control. Decades later, Dr. Strangelove remains both a warning and a confession that mankind's greatest threat has always been itself. The Cold War may have ended, but its prophecies still echo through film and history. These 1960s movies did more than entertain, they foresaw the fractures of our age long before we lived them. Which of these visions haunts you most? Tell us below, and remember to like, subscribe, and join us for more stories Hollywood tried to forget.